Welcome to another ROI of Yoga podcast. Today, I'm very grateful to have Daniela Rubino as my guest and yoga teacher, but also myofunctional therapy expert and oxygen advantage instructor. So multiple hats that she's wearing and a lot of knowledge, of course, that come with these hats. So I'm looking forward to delving into all these different areas of her expertise and how they come together. So welcome, Daniela.
Hello, thank you very much for having me.
It's a pleasure. I would like to start by giving us a little bit of your background and how you come today to be working as a yoga teacher and myofunctional therapy expert, and of course, a breathwork instructor.
So as you said, I am a yoga teacher. From teaching yoga, I was really interested in the breath and breath work, and I know I needed to learn more about it. And I always felt that I was instructing it wrong. So I did loads of research, found Buteyko breathing, then from there found the oxygen advantage. And of course, that's all backed up with sort of, research from the last 20 years. And it completely makes sense. And from there, I then became interested in myofunctional therapy. And it was from really my sisters having children and their children being tongue-tied, and that tongue-tied not being released, as when they were babies, they were advised that, it's fine, the tongue-tie won't affect them later on in life. And then seeing how it did and seeing how my sister's children were breathing led me to do loads of research and find myofunctional therapy. And yes, I studied with Sarah Hornsby doing a myofunctional therapy course. At the moment, because I'm not a dentist, a hygienist, or a speech therapist, I can't actually practice myofunctional therapy. But I do work in a myofunctional therapy clinic in Harley Street on the breath reeducation side of things. But yes, hopefully eventually I'll get to practice myofunctional therapy.
Excellent. So going back to this instance of your sister's children having a tongue tie, at what age were they, and at what age are kids diagnosed with this condition? What are the signs that parents maybe have to keep an eye on in regards to identifying if there is such an issue for their kids?
So they can be sort of, it can be done at birth. But if it sort of gets misdiagnosed, I guess, there can be problems with swallowing, reflux, later on in life, speech issues, normally forming the letter R can be quite difficult, teeth grinding, not latching when they're breastfeeding, mouth breathing, of course. There's some of the sort of symptoms connected.
And from what you're telling me, the diagnosis may come from birth all the way to the years of when speech starts taking place.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Or even in adults, like adults suffering with digestive issues, chronic headaches, poor dental health, grinding of the teeth, snoring, posture, forward head posture. It could potentially be tongue restriction, so a tongue tie.
Okay, so very quickly we got into some of the details of your work and how it can be useful to individuals, but of different ages. Can we take a step back and maybe you introduce us to what is myofunctional therapy? Yeah,
of course. So myofunctional therapy is fairly simple. And it's kind of like physiotherapy for the face, the neck. So it's a combination of exercises to improve your bites, your breathing, your facial posture. So the training will target like the neck, the face, the tongue, obviously, correcting the tongue's position so it's up in the roof of the mouth, creating a lip seal so the lips are always closed, maintaining nasal breathing, and then we look at the swallowing pattern as well. So when you swallow water or food, the tongue kind of should ripple and wave back, and then the food should draw down like that. Sometimes when the tongue's restricted or there's a tie, people, children or adults may swallow by pushing the tongue out, so like a reverse swallow. So yeah, it's basically the re-education of the face and neck muscles, re-educating someone how to swallow and chew correctly and breathe correctly. So during sort of your myofunctional therapy sessions, there'll be these exercises. You may have a tongue tie release as well if you need it. So you do the exercises before, get the tongue tie released, and then do the exercises after, so it doesn't reattach, and you can kind of use those muscles freely and not sort of go back into those bad habits.
Oh. So it sounds to me that even for digestive purposes, your work can serve, right?
Exactly, 100%, yeah. So yeah, a lot of babies suffering with reflux, it could be linked to a oral myofunctional therapy issue, which is interesting.
After your advice, I recommended one of my clients to a myofunctional therapy practitioner. He was based in US, so I could not send him to your clinic in Harley Street. And he after his first session, he reported back to me that a few of his symptoms, his therapist said that they might be linked to tongue tie, and although it is not very severe, it might still be worth going through an operation. Who would you say, you already spoke a few times about children and their symptoms, but you also said that you also work with adults. Can you say, can we try to organize a little bit, because there are so many different areas that we have touched in the first 10 minutes of our conversation in terms of who can benefit from your work, that so that people can say, okay, you know what, I probably need to see Daniela, or I need to see such an expert. What are the goals of this practice?
So for example, your client had, was it chronic headaches?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like a lot of people with TMJ issues, chronic headaches, chronic neck pain, chronic jaw pain. This could be because the tongue fascia is so sort of thick that it pulls the jaw and overuses the jaw and the neck. And that can lead to these chronic headaches and neck pain, back pain. So things like that.
Everywhere in the back? Sorry to interrupt you, but is it more upper back, or even the lower back pain can be responsible for that?
Predominantly upper back,
okay.
And neck, but it could of course affect lower back, because it could affect the diaphragm, the tongue, the fascia from the tongue runs down through the diaphragm, through the psoas, all the way down to your toes. So if you look at it on a diagram, it's really interesting to see that sort of connection. So yeah, it could affect the diaphragm as well, which then affects your core stability, which can then affect lower back. So yeah, it's all connected. So it could potentially affect the lower back
Headache,
as well.
we said headache, pain in the neck, back.
Speech issues, digestive issues, sleep apnea, snoring, posture, teeth grinding. Yeah, those are a few.
Okay.
Some children even with ADHD, and we know that from sort of the breathwork stuff as well. But sometimes some cases that can be misdiagnosed, and they'll have a sleep study done on them and notice that there's sort of incorrect breathing and maybe a tongue tie as well, or sort of a problem within the mouth. So yeah, ADHD as well.
So it seems to me, Daniela, that there is a lot of awareness these days about breathing, which is fantastic, and you know, some books that have come out, some from Patrick McCone or James Nestor's book, or I think there are a few people now that preach the benefits of nasal breathing. But there seems to me that myofunctional therapy unravels another layer that may exist underneath why people cannot nasal breathe, which might have to do with the fascia and the function, probably overall, of the mouth. Is that correct? Would you say that this is?
Yeah, definitely. I think you're right. It sort of unravels another issue that may be causing the mouth breathing, or the low tongue posture may create a high narrow palate. And obviously the palate is the floor of the nasal cavity. So then you're restricting the size of the navel cavity. And then, yeah, it's kind of like chicken egg situation. But yes, there's definitely a link there and another sort of layer.
And you are working as in the clinic at Harley Street, which, by the way, you should mention the name of the clinic so people can check it out. You want to share?
Yeah, Myofunctional Therapy UK. And it's run by Yuli, who is, I call her a little Yoda because she's like a magician. She's amazing. She's got so much knowledge. She does a lot of bodywork stuff as well. So yeah, I'd definitely check her out. Okay,
Myofunctional Therapy UK.
Yeah.
So you're working there as a breath work, as a breathing rehabilitation practitioner, and obviously because of the name of the clinic is already myofunctional therapy, I would imagine that people are already like coming for that type of service, so they probably have also some of the symptoms that you described. But also, you work as a yoga teacher. How much of the total percentage of people that are mouth breathers you would say, if you were to make a guess, due to this dysfunction in the fascia of their mouth, and how many would be just, I don't know, habit, lack of knowledge, which of course I would imagine also maybe one affects the other, maybe.
I'm not too sure, but one affects the other, definitely. But a lot of it is habit for a lot of people, like miseducation of the breath. So many yoga classes I go to and the breath is taught mistaught, I guess, and then that becomes habit. But I don't know, I guess it's probably 50-50 at the moment, what I'm seeing.
Okay. We will go back into Tangtai, and I would like to delve more into the myofunctional therapy, but I'd like also to take the opportunity here because we are both yoga teachers, and I'm sure there is first of all, are we agreeing that yoga has a lot to offer, a lot of benefits to offer in terms of improving one's breathing?
Yes.
Okay. So we agree that yoga is not, we are yoga teachers and we believe in yoga. All right. Now, with that said, what would you say would be some of the misconceptions that people that go to yoga classes, maybe they are yoga teachers, may have in regards to optimal breathing?
I think heavy breathing very loud and heavy is often thought as good breathing within a yoga class. A lot of like predominantly throughout the class, a lot of big exhales, which are sometimes not always necessary, I think. What do you think?
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. What about, and I'm sorry, of course, like, we have both done some similar studies, so obviously we have similar influences, but I'm fully aware that there are people that probably hear this and it's new to them, or they have also heard from teachers that they highly respect and they are very knowledgeable in many ways, that big breaths are beneficial, or even that sighing is beneficial. I don't know if you have been exposed, there has been this like pattern that in the last maybe 6 months have become very popular. There was this study that said that a short inhalation from the nose and a double sigh, it's like, is the quickest way to relax. And of course, people all of a sudden may try to make this a pattern and a way of relaxing. What do you think about that? Because, like there is people like, they're like saying, okay, maybe double sigh is a good idea. What do you think?
Well, if it's done like chronically and constantly, it's probably not going to do that. It's going to do quite the opposite. But maybe like now and again, or like, but then it just gets overused, especially within the class, like big exhale, big sigh, like constantly through the class. And I think, I don't know, I think visually people think, oh, that is relaxing, like that sort of motion and that, what that sort of portrays. But yeah, I that sounds counterproductive to me.
Do you ever suggest something like that, something among these lines in your classes?
No, I don't. Just because that can come once our breathing has been re-educated and is functional. That maybe can come after, but most people need to work on re-educating their breathing and creating functional from dysfunctional. Yeah. That takes a long time.
Yeah, and I would say that I'm fully aware of that, and I'm not trying to play devil's advocate or be annoying here. I think we're on the same page. Very quickly, the way that I would explain is that having a spoon of sugar is going to give you a high, but this cannot be the way of increasing your energy levels or re-educating your palate or your digestive tract. It's actually like, the similar thing with what one is achieving with a double exhalation. The fact that it has been shown to relax someone, that means nothing. And I think as teachers or therapists, we don't want to give people, probably quick fixes. We want to, as you said, educate and train them so that they don't need them. They don't need this double sigh, or they don't need this scoop of sugar.
That's a good analogy.
Now, Tangtai, you mentioned a few times. Can you describe it? Because I bet that there are a few people watching or listening that they don't exactly get, like, they think like, how do I know my Tangtai? You seem to present it as a very common thing, but my tongue is there. It's not tied at all.
So tongue-tie develops in utero, and if it develops, it restricts. So it's the frenulum, this bit underneath your tongue. I do have a tongue tie, which I need to get released. It's not. Yes, I will get it released. Okay. It's not severe, but it's still a tongue tie, and it restricts the back of my tongue from reaching the roof of the mouth. The front of my tongue, no problem. It's sort of an anterior tongue tie. So sometimes some tongue ties where the frenulum's really tight will really restrict the range of movement, limit the range of movement in the mouth. So Yuli, the lady who runs Myofunctional Therapy UK, one of the tools that she has invented goes inside the mouth and really tries to sort of open and release the fascia inside the mouth. So someone with quite a restricted tongue would have sort of quite sort of tight fascia around the face and the neck.
Okay.
But yeah, there's levels of Tangtai, and some people are so restricted that the speech, that's what causes the speech issues, because the lack of range of movement. Some people, like myself, can use myofunctional therapy to sort of increase the decrease the tension in the frenulum and increase range of movement, but will still benefit from getting it cut. Have I answered your question? Not really.
I think you did. No. I think you did. Yeah. I'm going to ask some follow-up questions, which hopefully will clarify things even more. But no, I think you explained very well what is the issue with tongue tie, what it means to have a tongue tie. It's not something like a knot that you see. So I assume, based on what you said, that there is a way of assessing. There is some assessment, some tests that you run in order to determine if someone's tongue is, if there is such a problem, correct?
Yes. Yeah, you'd have to go through quite a big assessment. They'd take many measurements of your mouth, look at your palate, and then they'd assess. Some functional dentists, who may be myofunctional therapists as well, could also assess for a tongue tie.
Okay, so it's a full consultation basically to assess if there is such an issue. And the operation that you referred to a few times is it lasts how long?
It's quite a short operation. It's if as a baby, normally it's just cut quite quickly, and they can tell sort of straight away as a baby. They may cut it. However, that really should be followed up with myofunctional therapy so it doesn't reattach. But the operation is not very long. Often now it's done with like a laser. And sometimes it's stitched up and you can sort of eat within sort of the next day or so. So it's not too long of an operation. The recovery is okay. And then you'd probably start your myofunctional therapy a week after the operation, once it's healed a little more.
Okay. And the myofunctional therapy, I would imagine, depends on the severity of the individual, but how long does it usually last?
Probably 8 weeks before and after a tongue tie operation. You do 8 weeks of myofunctional therapy. And you can sometimes see in the before and after pictures, faces change quite dramatically. Cheekbones are higher, eyes are wider, jaw maybe becomes wider or sort of better sort of formed. So that's kind of an added benefit.
Okay. And it seems like now you're in competition with plastic surgery.
Yeah. I was actually have you read this book, Jaws?
I was recommended this book, but I have not read it.
It's good. And I was just looking at this picture.
For those that are listening to the podcast, you can see the video on YouTube. But yeah, please show.
So here is 2 images of the lips.
Wow, much more full, the lips on the right.
Yeah, so the lips become more full when the jaw is forward and the posture is correct. So yeah, no lip fillers there.
That's amazing. And it goes to show that we retrain our body to operate the way it is meant to, and it becomes more beautiful. And
like the skull 15,000 years ago would predominantly have straight teeth, wide jaw, forward facial growth. As you know, we're not meant to have crooked teeth.
Do you want to to speak about the link between tongue tie and mouth breathing. You touched upon, but because it was very quick, I think some of the listeners may have missed it. But there is a reason why tongue tie people will have be more prone to mouth breathing. It has to do with how it all affects the nasal opening at the back.
Yeah, so if the tongue is restricted so much so that it sits at the bottom of the mouth, this may cause the mouth to hang open, for example. And then if a baby from a very young age is breathing in this way with the mouth open, the face grows long and narrow. I was a big mouth breather as a child, long, narrow face, high palate. And like I said before, the palate is the floor of the nasal cavity that reduces the size of the nasal cavity. And then when maybe they try to nasal breathe, it's more difficult, or it becomes, obviously, when you breathe through the mouth, say the tongue is low and the mouth is open, and you begin to breathe through the mouth, the nose will congest, and that will perpetuate it and then continually cause mouth breathing. So yeah, it could just literally be because it's so restricted and it's to the bottom, it keeps the mouth open, and then that could even lead to thumb sucking. So the tongue, when it's resting to the roof of the mouth, is kind of stimulating the bundle of nerves that's connected to our parasympathetic nervous system. So often when a child has like a sort of a comforter on the face or something in the mouth, they're trying to do what the tongue's meant to do, create that connection and connect to that bundle of nerves, which is sort of just there under the palate. So yeah, I went off on a tangent again, sorry.
No. It's all fantastic, and it all gives more of a more nice picture, or gives the full picture of how something that may be seeming like relevant only to people that have read Patrick's books is very much goes back to their childhood, and of course, I guess how they will be helping their children and why their children have certain behaviors. While we are on the topic of the tongue, would you like to give us a little bit more of information on how this can also link to posture, and maybe even, I think, to even walking? I think this can also be like two areas that may not seem obvious in the beginning, but they are also associated.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so the tongue fascia is one continuous band that draws down the body through the neck, into the thorax, into the arms, through the psoas, all the way down to the toes. And if there is a restriction, if there's sort of like a pulling, this could pull the body in different ways. And then the whole structure, for example, could tilt to one side. And this could affect the spine and the way the discs sit together. This could then potentially lead to scoliosis or lordosis. And then it could also affect how the feet land on the floor. So a lot of toddlers toe walk, and that could also be a sign of a restriction in the mouth. Posture as well. So if the tongue is low and drawing back and maybe pressing on the airways, our body will adapt. So the head will draw forward, so we've got an opening so we can breathe properly. When our heads forwards, our shoulders forwards, that's going to completely throw everything off balance, and of course change the way we walk, change the way the feet land on the floor. So yeah, it's all connected.
It's all connected. So obviously the take-home message, I think, is tongue at the top of the palate as much as possible.
Yeah.
Mouth closed.
Yeah, lip sealed.
Lips sealed. How would you, until you go and see your specialist, because there might be a lot more re-education and a lot more release and even an operation that might be needed. But
yeah,
if you're listening to that now, start keeping the tongue at the top of the palate and doing the lip sealed action. It's starting point. I guess it will hopefully feed into any other exercises that you will be giving people to do, correct?
yeah, of course, yeah. And trying to swallow with the tongue to the roof of the mouth as well, and creating that wave motion so the tongue sort of waves back when you swallow.
So how would you advise people to do that last bit? So if they were to swallow, how would they make sure that they do this movement that you just described?
So practice by taking maybe a sip of water,
okay,
keeping the tongue to the roof of the mouth, and imagine sort of creating a wave-like motion back, so drawing it back. Yeah, you got to practice it. Maybe see how you swallow, because you do it naturally. You don't think about it really.
Yeah, but naturally we do a lot of things in theory correctly, like walking, but we know that a lot of us walk like ducks, or like we don't have the ideal walking gait, let alone or the swallowing gait, swallowing pattern. Now let's go back into yoga, because I have a personal interest to learn more. Can you give us? I know that your yoga classes may vary in terms of how much emphasis you put on, or I assume that may vary. And there will be some yoga classes that you will be much more focused on breathing, and some others at the asana aspect or other elements that you want to address. But obviously, with the knowledge that you have, there is no way you can ignore and not say anything, right? And you don't think that there is a basic level of information that everybody would follow. So what would which are these cues? Let's say someone cannot attend your classes. I assume that there are people that are not local to you listening. Yeah. I mean, I guess they can always reach out to you for online sessions. But what are the things that you would suggest everybody to start doing in the class that they will be attending next?
So obviously, I always instruct tongue to the palate. I do quite a lot of myofascial release within my yoga class. Really simple stuff, using the tennis ball, predominantly in the psoas area. A lot of work with the accessory muscles. So if you do have problems like with TMJ, chronic headaches, neck pain, so a lot of neck, shoulder focus. And yeah, the class is heavily focused around the breath. Normally, my yoga classes.
Okay. So you do have a lot of emphasis. So you are telling people to. So you have these techniques, this fascia release techniques for the psoas. You said also about the jaw. There's some TMJ release techniques. You encourage tongue at the top of the palate, anywhere, or at the back as much as possible.
So it's the tongue should kind of be like a blanket. It should just all sort of sit on top, not like with force, just gently, just sit there. But yeah, the back, if you can get the back up as well, and the front, but it shouldn't touch the front teeth. It should just sit behind the front teeth. You don't want to push the teeth forward with the tongue. Okay.
You probably are not very keen on seeing mouths open, I assume. Anything else? Yeah, it's already quite some useful information, but anything else you would suggest people to start doing during their yoga classes?
Let me think. Just, of course, keeping that connection of tongue to palate, but keeping the jaw soft as well. Often people think that means keep everything tense, but that connection and then keeping it relaxed. So finding that balance of, tension and relaxation. Yes.
I see. And when it comes to postures,
Yeah.
have you seen some postures being more prone to causing dysfunctional breathing than others, or styles of yoga?
Yeah, definitely. I think when things are potentially forced, or when there's pain or someone's sort of gone too far, the breath gets faster, heavier, and things like that. Yeah, some styles of yoga can affect the breath, but then I think it's the instructor really, how they're instructing it. No matter what style, you can still functionally breathe if you're instructed to functionally breathe.
Okay. And I would like to ask you three last questions, which are, your favorite breathing exercise?
My favorite breathing exercise is breathing light and breathing slow. So I have quite a nice audio. My partner, fortunately, makes music, which is good. And he creates different audios to sync up with breath patterns. So my favorite breathing exercise is using a particular audio that really simple, just instructs 6 in and 6 out. Slight pause at the top and at the end. So breathing slow and breathing light using that piece of music.
Okay. Would you be happy to share that exercise? So you can give me the link and I will put it in the description. Awesome. Second question. If you were to wake up in 10 if you were to wake up in 10 years time, so it would be 2032, I guess, and switch on the TV and hear in the news, on BBC News, some breaking news that would make you very happy, what would that news be?
I think that myofunctional therapy would be, well, I'd hope it would be in the next couple of years, but it would be more well known. It'd be something that's on the NHS, something that's accessible to parents, and just because these things can have such a lasting and profound effect on someone's life. So a tongue tie could then potentially cause sleep apnea. Sleep apnea could, I don't know what the stat was, might not be getting it right, but you're 4 times more likely to develop cancer if you've got sleep apnea. And then something that can be done from a baby, if that knowledge was sort of out there more, so many things could potentially be stopped.
Awesome. Yeah. So hopefully before 2032, BBC News will be announcing that myofunctional therapy is part of every NHS practice. Yes. And okay. And last question: what are your plans for the coming up year, for the the remaining of 2022 and moving to the next year?
So my plans are to try and get this information out there a little bit more accessible, using social platforms and doing more sort of talks on the subject, targeting parents, children at schools, even teenagers, and just trying to really get the information out there and educating other people about it. So that's my plans. I need to get going.
Yeah, absolutely. And you will be giving me the information on how people can find you so that they can contact you if they want to arrange such a talk or a workshop for their school or organization, because as you said, it is like very much needed and often overlooked. Hopefully on the back of all the nasal awareness that has the reason, I think myofunctional therapy has a good chance of becoming more mainstream, let's say.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you very much for joining me today. It has been a pleasure. I've definitely learned a lot myself. I hope the listeners also found some of the information useful.
Yes, it's
And
been great. Thank you.
And I'm pretty sure that we will be working closely in the near future, whether it is under the Oxygen Advantage umbrella or in some other form, because you are a wealth of information and you don't seem to be stopping anytime soon in terms of learning more and doing more things. And yeah, I want to be part of your world.
Me too. That would be great.
Thank you.
Cheers.